Alexander Reed, 38, self-made tech millionaire and CEO of Reedy Tech Solutions, never expected his Thursday morning to unravel so completely. The day had started with a phone call at 5:30 a.m. His nanny, Mrs. Patel, was down with a severe flu and couldn't make it. On any other day, he might have rescheduled his meetings, but today was different. The investors from Singapore were in town just for the day, and this meeting had been planned for months. "It's okay. We can do this, can't we, sweetheart?" he whispered to his 8-month-old daughter, Lily, who cooed back at him as he changed her diaper. Alexander had been a single father for 3 months now, ever since his wife Diane had left them both, claiming she wasn't cut out for motherhood before relocating to Paris for a fashion career opportunity. By 9:30 a.m., Alexander had already attended 2 virtual meetings from home, prepared Lily's bottles, and packed her diaper bag with extra everything. His mother lived 2 states away, his sister was traveling for work, and his usual backup childcare service needed 24-hour notice. He made the decision. Lily would have to come with him to the café where he often prepared before big meetings. Café Lumière was Alexander's thinking space. With its warm lighting, quiet jazz, and excellent coffee, it was the perfect place to organize his thoughts. The owner, Mr. Huang, knew him well enough to always reserve his favorite corner table, partially hidden by a large indoor palm. Alexander arrived with Lily sleeping peacefully in her stroller, her little face relaxed and her tiny fingers curled into fists. "The usual, Mr. Reed?" Mr. Huang asked with a smile before noticing the stroller. His eyebrows rose slightly, but he quickly composed himself. "And perhaps some warm water for the little one's bottle?" "That would be perfect, thank you," Alexander replied, carefully positioning the stroller beside the table where he could rock it gently with his foot while working. For 20 blessed minutes, Alexander managed to review his presentation while Lily slept. He annotated the last financial projections, refined his pitch about the new software platform, and even had time to sip his perfect black coffee. The familiar warmth of the café wrapped around him like a security blanket, and for a moment, he felt that everything would work out fine. Then Lily woke up. It started with a whimper, a small, innocent sound that Alexander responded to immediately, reaching for her pacifier. But today the pacifier was firmly rejected. Lily's face scrunched up, turning an alarming shade of red before she let out a wail that seemed impossibly loud for someone so small. "Shh, it's okay, Alexander murmured, quickly unbuckling her from the stroller and lifting her to his shoulder. He patted her back gently, swaying from side to side in a motion that usually calmed her. Not today. Lily's cries escalated, each one seemingly louder than the last. Alexander checked her diaper, dry. He offered her bottle, refused. He tried the teething toy thrown to the floor. Sweat began forming on his forehead as he became acutely aware of the other patrons. An elderly couple at the next table exchanged glances. A man in a business suit looked up from his laptop with poorly concealed irritation. "Come on, sweetie, what's wrong?" Alexander pleaded, bouncing Lily a little more vigorously. His phone buzzed. An email from the lead investor asking to move the meeting 15 minutes earlier. Alexander felt a knot forming in his stomach. With one arm still holding Lily, he tried to type a response with his free hand. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Lily's cries had evolved into a sort of rhythmic sobbing that seemed to fill the entire cafe. Alexander had tried everything in his parental toolkit, walking her around the cafe, showing her the colorful artwork on the walls, even playing her favorite song quietly on his phone. Nothing worked. "Sir, perhaps some fresh air might help," Mr. Huang suggested kindly, though Alexander could see the concern for his other customers in his eyes. "Yes, maybe," Alexander replied, his voice strained. He stood up, gathering his scattered papers with one hand, trying to stuff them into his leather portfolio while balancing Lily on his hip. A spreadsheet floated to the floor. When he bent to reach for it, his phone slipped from his pocket, clattering against the hardwood floor. Lily, startled by the noise, howled with renewed vigor. The knot in Alexander's stomach tightened. The meeting was in 45 minutes. His presentation was half reviewed. His daughter was inconsolable. And now people were definitely staring, some with judgment, others with pity. Neither felt good. "I'll get that for you," said a soft voice, as a young woman in the cafe's uniform apron knelt to retrieve his phone and papers. Alexander looked up, meeting warm brown eyes that somehow held no judgment at all. "Just kindness, thank you," he managed. accepting his belongings. She seems really upset, the woman observed, looking at Lily with genuine concern. I've tried everything, Alexander admitted, the words coming out more desperately than he intended. She's never like this. I don't know what's wrong. The woman, Mia according to her name tag, tilted her head slightly, studying Lily with a thoughtful expression. Sometimes babies just have bad days like the rest of us, she said. May I try something? I used to work at a daycare before this job. Alexander hesitated only briefly before nodding. At this point, he had nothing to lose. Mia set down her serving tray on his table and approached carefully. Instead of immediately reaching for Lily, she stood where the baby could see her clearly. Then she began to hum softly, a gentle melody that somehow cut through Lily's cries. Her hands moved slowly in front of Lily's face, not quite touching but creating gentle patterns in the air. Lily's cries didn't stop immediately, but they faltered. Her red-rimmed eyes fixed on Mia's moving hands, following them as they traced invisible shapes. The humming continued, evolving into a soft song with words in a language Alexander didn't recognize. It's an old song my grandmother taught me, Mia explained quietly, without breaking the rhythm. Something about the melody. It's supposed to mimic a heartbeat. Babies often respond to it, and Lily did. Her sobbing gradually subsided to hiccups, her little body still trembling with the aftermath of her emotional storm. Alexander watched in amazement as Mia continued her gentle song, never rushing, never forcing interaction. She simply created a space of calm around them, a bubble of peace in the busy cafe. When Lily's breathing finally steadied, Mia slowly, very slowly, raised her hands in a questioning gesture toward the baby. Alexander nodded and Mia gently touched Lily's tiny fists, which had been clenched throughout her crying spell. Hello there, little one, Mia whispered. That was quite a big feeling you were having, wasn't it? To Alexander's absolute shock, Lily uncurled one tiny fist and wrapped her fingers around Mia's index finger. And then, miracle of miracles, his daughter's face relaxed into a small wobbling smile. The cafe had gone quiet. Alexander suddenly realized that several patrons had been watching the scene unfold. The elderly couple was smiling. Even the businessman with the laptop had a softened expression on his face. How did you do that? Alexander asked, his voice barely above a whisper, afraid to break whatever magic had just happened. Mia shrugged, a small, humble gesture. Babies are better at sensing our energy than we think. She probably felt your stress. Sometimes they just need someone who isn't carrying all that worry to connect with them. She gently wiggled her finger that was still in Lily's grip. Isn't that right, little sunshine? Alexander felt something tight in his chest loosen, a knot of tension he hadn't even realized was there. For the first time that morning, he took a full, deep breath. I don't know how to thank you. No need, Mia replied, carefully extracting her finger from Lily's grip. I should get back to work before Mr. Huang thinks I'm slacking off. Wait, Alexander said. Please, would you sit with her just for a few more minutes? I need to finish reviewing these projections and the meeting is... He stopped himself, realizing how presumptuous he sounded. I'm sorry, that's not your job. Mia glanced over at Mr. Huang, who gave a small nod from behind the counter. I can take my break now, she said. 15 minutes. Will that help? Enormously, Alexander breathed. As Mia settled into the chair beside him, accepting Lily onto her lap with practiced ease, Alexander felt a strange sense of relief washing over him. It wasn't just having help with Lily. It was the sudden realization that sometimes it was okay to accept help from unexpected sources. For the next 15 minutes, Alexander worked with renewed focus, occasionally glancing up to see his daughter completely content in Mia's gentle care. They didn't speak much, but in that shared quiet something significant had shifted. A wall had come down. A connection had been made. What Alexander couldn't possibly know was how this chance encounter would change both their lives forever. Mia Chen's day had started like any other. The alarm blared at 5 a.m., giving her just enough time to help her mother take her morning medications before catching the first bus downtown. At 26, Mia's life had fallen into a predictable pattern. Wake up, care for mom, work double shifts at Café Lumiere, study when possible, sleep, repeat. Today marked her 3rd anniversary at the cafe. 3 years of memorizing coffee orders, balancing trays, and smiling through exhaustion. 3 years since she'd had to leave her early childhood education program at the community college, when her mother's rheumatoid arthritis had worsened to the point where the medical bills started arriving faster than they could open the envelopes. "Happy work anniversary," Mr. Huang had said that morning, sliding her a small red envelope with a modest bonus inside. "You're my most reliable server, Mia." The praise had warmed her, though the envelope's contents would go straight to the electricity bill that was already 2 weeks overdue. Still, Mia tucked the card into her pocket with genuine gratitude. Mr. Huang had been good to her, allowing her to adjust her schedule whenever her mother had doctor appointments and occasionally sending her home with leftover pastries. Tea. Morning rush had been particularly hectic. A business networking group had reserved half the cafe, all of them wanting complicated coffee orders and avocado toast with modifications. By 9:30, Mia's feet were already aching in her worn service shoes, the right one developing a blister where the sole had started separating from the upper. When the well-dressed man with the crying baby was seated in her section, Mia couldn't help but notice the contrast. His perfectly tailored suit probably cost more than 3 months of her rent, yet he looked completely lost as his baby wailed uncontrollably. "Just black coffee, please," he'd said distractedly, barely looking up from his phone as he bounced the baby on his knee, "and maybe some hot water for a bottle." Mia nodded professionally, though she couldn't help noticing the designer diaper bag or the top-of-the-line stroller parked beside his table. Rich people had problems too, she reminded herself as she turned to place his order. Money didn't make parenting any easier. As the baby's cries intensified, Mia found herself watching from behind the counter while preparing his coffee. The man was typing something on his phone with one hand while holding the baby with the other. The little girl's face was bright red, tears streaming down her chubby cheeks. "That poor baby," whispered Tanya, another server. "And that poor guy. Looks like he hasn't slept in days. Probably has a nanny calling in sick," Mia replied, though without any real judgment. Something about the man's increasingly desperate attempts to soothe his daughter tugged at her heart. She recognized the look in his eyes, the same overwhelmed panic she'd felt when the doctor had first explained her mother's diagnosis. When Mia brought the coffee to his table, she couldn't help noticing the scattered papers, complex-looking charts, and what appeared to be a presentation outline. Important work, clearly. The baby's cries had turned into hiccuping sobs that seemed to physically pain the father. "Is there anything else I can get for you, sir?" Mia asked, raising her voice slightly to be heard over the crying. The man looked up, distraction evident in his bloodshot eyes. "No, thank you. I'm sorry about the noise." 20 minutes later, the situation had only deteriorated. Other customers were giving pointed looks, and Mr. Huang had made several concerned glances toward the table. The baby was now wailing with impressive lung capacity, and the man was attempting to gather his things while holding her, dropping papers and his phone in the process. That's when Mia made a decision that wasn't really a decision at all, just a natural response to someone clearly in need of help. After assisting him with his dropped items, the look of naked gratitude in his eyes when she offered to try calming the baby surprised her. People like him, wealthy, successful types, didn't usually look at people like her as anything more than part of the service background. "May I?" she'd asked, and he'd nodded with such relief that Mia almost laughed. The lullaby came naturally, her grandmother's song, the one she'd sung to all the children in their extended family for generations. Mia had used it countless times during her practicum at the daycare center, where she'd discovered her gift for connecting with even the most distressed children. As the baby's cries subsided under her gentle attention, Mia felt a familiar pang of longing. This working with children was what she was meant to do. Not that serving coffee wasn't honest work, but in moments like these, the gap between her current reality and her dreams felt particularly wide. When Mr. Huang nodded that she could take her break to help the man, Mia settled into the chair, accepting the baby onto her lap. The little girl, Lily, the father called her, had surprisingly strong fingers that gripped Mia's index finger with determination. "She likes you," the man, Alexander, said, sounding both relieved and slightly puzzled. Mia shrugged, bouncing Lily gently on her knee. "I was studying early childhood education before." She trailed off, not wanting to burden this stranger with her personal circumstances. "Before?" Alexander prompted, looking up from his papers with unexpected interest. Life happened, Mia said simply. Family responsibilities. But I worked at the Little Sprouts daycare for about a year as part of my program. I loved it there. Alexander nodded, returning to his papers, but not before Mia caught a flash of something in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps. The recognition of another human doing what they had to do, regardless of what they wanted to do. For 15 minutes they existed in a strangely comfortable silence. Mia hummed softly to Lily, who was now contentedly playing with a set of plastic keys Mia had fished out of the diaper bag. Alexander worked through his papers with intense focus, occasionally glancing up to check on his daughter with an expression of lingering disbelief at her transformed mood. I really can't thank you enough, he said when Mia's break was ending. You saved me. Literally saved me. I have an investor meeting in 20 minutes that I can't miss. No problem, Mia replied, carefully transferring Lily back to her father's arms. She's a sweetheart. Just having a tough morning. Like her dad, Alexander said with a self-deprecating smile that transformed his face, making him look younger and less careworn. Mia returned to work, aware of Alexander gathering his things, preparing to leave. She was wiping down a nearby table when he approached her again, Lily now sleeping peacefully against his shoulder. I'm sorry to bother you again, he said quietly, but I wanted to properly thank you. He handed her a business card. Alexander Reed, CEO of ReadyTech Solutions. Mia accepted the card automatically, though she had no idea what she'd do with it. Call a Millionaire tech CEO for coffee sometime? Not likely. I've never seen Lily respond to anyone like that, he continued. Not even her regular nanny. You have a gift? Just experience, Mia deflected, tucking the card into her apron pocket. Alexander seemed to hesitate, shifting Lily slightly on his shoulder. Would you? I mean, this is completely inappropriate, and please feel free to say no, but would you consider watching Lily sometime? As a backup sitter? My nanny is great, but she's getting older and sometimes needs days off, and days like today happen, and... He stopped himself. I'm sorry. That's presumptuous of me. Mia blinked, processing his request. Her immediate instinct was to say yes, both because she genuinely liked the baby and because whatever he would pay for babysitting would certainly be more than what she made hourly at the cafe. But then reality intruded. I work double shifts most days, she explained, and when I'm not here, I'm caring for my mother. She has rheumatoid arthritis, pretty severe. Oh, Alexander's face fell slightly. I understand. Of course. But thank you for considering me, Mia added politely. Alexander nodded, then reached into his wallet and placed what Mia initially thought was a $20 bill on the table. For your help today. I really appreciate it. Only after he'd left Lily still sleeping peacefully against his shoulder did Mia realize it wasn't a $20 but a $100 bill. Her first instinct was to run after him. It was too much, clearly a mistake. But by then he was already gone. Tanya whistled low when Mia showed her. Nice tip. Must be nice to throw around money like that. He was just grateful, Mia said, though the money would make a significant difference in her tight budget this month. She slipped the bill into her pocket alongside his business card, trying to ignore a strange feeling that something significant had just happened. Something beyond a generous tip and a fussy baby calmed. What Mia couldn't know was that as Alexander walked to his meeting, his mind wasn't fully on his investors or his presentation. Part of it remained in the cafe, with the kind-eyed server who had shown such natural care for his daughter. The server who had mentioned studying early childhood education before life happened. The server who, without knowing it, had planted a seed of an idea in Alexander's mind that would soon change both their lives in ways neither could imagine. Mia had almost forgotten about the encounter with Alexander and his daughter by the time her shift ended. The $100 tip had been safely tucked away in her wallet, earmarked for her mother's prescription refills. The business card had been transferred to her jacket pocket, more out of habit than any intention to use it. The rest of her day had blurred into the usual routine, serving customers, wiping tables, refilling coffee urns. By the time she caught the 7:15 p.m. bus home, her thoughts were focused on what simple dinner she could prepare with the dwindling supplies in their refrigerator. Her mother was awake when she arrived at their small apartment, sitting in her favorite armchair with knitting needles moving slowly in her swollen hands. You shouldn't be doing that, Mom, Mia said gently, setting down her bag. Dr. Wu said to rest your joints. Li Chen looked up with a stubborn smile that Mia recognized as her own inheritance. If I rested every time something hurt, I'd never move at all, she replied in Mandarin. How was work? The usual, Mia said, not mentioning the generous tip or the crying baby. Her mother worried enough about her already. After helping her mother to bed and taking a quick shower, Mia finally emptied her pockets. Alexander Reed's business card fell onto her small desk, the embossed logo catching the light from her reading lamp. On impulse, she typed the company name into her old laptop. HOA Tech Solutions was bigger than she'd expected, a software company specializing in supply chain management systems, with offices in 3 cities. Recent news articles mentioned their breakthrough technology that had revolutionized inventory tracking for hospitals during the pandemic. And there he was, Alexander Reed, founder and CEO, photographed in a sleek office, looking much more composed than he had in the cafe. 38-year-old tech wunderkind, one article called him. Another mentioned his recent personal challenges, the departure of his wife shortly after their daughter's birth, leaving him as a single father balancing parenthood with running a growing company. Mia closed the laptop, feeling like she'd accidentally pried into someone's private life. Still, she couldn't help but feel a touch of admiration for the man. Single parenthood couldn't be easy, even with wealth to cushion the challenges. The next day at Café Lumière, Mia was in the middle of the morning rush when Mr. Huang called her name. Your section, he said, nodding toward the door. Your friend from yesterday is back. Mia turned to see Alexander entering. This time without Lily. He was dressed more casually today, dark jeans and a light blue, button-down shirt instead of a full suit, but still carried an air of someone accustomed to commanding. Attention, good morning. Mia greeted him professionally, approaching his table with her notepad ready. Just you today? Yes, Lily's with Mrs. Patel, my regular nanny, he explained. She's feeling better now. I'm glad to hear that, Mia said, pen poised. What can I get for you? Alexander seemed slightly nervous, his fingers tapping lightly on the table. Black coffee, please, and a few minutes of your time, if possible. Mia raised an eyebrow but nodded. I can take a short break in about 20 minutes, after I serve the corner table their breakfast. When she returned with his coffee, Alexander thanked her but didn't engage in further conversation, instead tapping away on his tablet. True to her word, Mia returned 20 minutes later, untying her apron as Mr. Huang gave her an inquisitive look from behind the counter. So, she said, sliding into the seat across from Alexander. How can I help you? Alexander set down his tablet and looked at her directly. His eyes were green, Mia noticed, with small lines at the corners that suggested he smiled often, despite the serious expression he wore now. I want to be straightforward with you, he began. What you did yesterday for Lily was remarkable. I've been thinking about it ever since. It was nothing, really, Mia said, feeling slightly uncomfortable with his intensity. It wasn't nothing, Alexander insisted. You have a gift with children. You mentioned you were studying early childhood education. Mia nodded cautiously. For a while. At Westlake Community College. Why did you stop, if you don't mind me asking? The question, though gently asked, made Mia bristle slightly. Life doesn't always go as planned, she said more curtly than she'd intended. My mother got sick. The medical bills piled up. School became a luxury I couldn't afford. Alexander nodded thoughtfully. I understand. More than you might think. My own mother raised me alone after my father died. She worked 3 jobs sometimes. The revelation surprised Mia. She'd assumed he came from money, given his current success. I'm sorry about your father, she said sincerely. It was a long time ago, Alexander replied, but watching my mother struggle taught me something important about opportunity and access. About how talent often goes unrealized because of circumstances beyond someone's control. Mia shifted in her seat, unsure where this conversation was heading. Mr. Reed? Alexander, please. Alexander, she corrected. I appreciate you coming back to thank me again, but that's not why I'm here, he interrupted, then immediately apologized. Sorry, I don't mean to keep cutting you off. I'm here because I have a business proposition for you. Mia's eyebrows shot up. A business proposition? Alexander nodded, leaning forward slightly. After yesterday, I did some thinking. A lot of thinking, actually. I barely slept. You see, I've been struggling with childcare ever since Lily's mother left. Mrs. Patel is wonderful, but she's in her 60s and has health issues of her own. I need more consistent care for Lily, especially given my unpredictable schedule. And you want me to babysit? Mia asked, trying to keep the skepticism from her voice. Like I said, I work double shifts most days, and when I'm not here, I'm not asking you to babysit, Alexander said. I'm asking you to consider a completely different opportunity. He opened his tablet and turned it toward her. On the screen was a property listing, a small commercial building about 15 minutes from the cafe. I don't understand, Mia said, looking at the listing. For the past year, I've been thinking about creating a childcare center for ReadyTech employees, Alexander explained. We have a young workforce, many with small children. The pandemic showed us how crucial reliable childcare is to working parents. I've set aside the funding, found a property, but I haven't found the right person to develop and run it. He paused, watching her face. Until yesterday. Mia stared at him, sure she was misunderstanding. You want me to... What exactly? I want to hire you to create and direct a childcare center, Alexander said simply. I've seen how you are with children. I've also done some research since yesterday, called Little Sprouts Daycare. They remember you. Said you were the most natural caregiver they'd ever had in their training program. Heat rushed to Mia's face. You checked up on me. I did, Alexander admitted without apology. I'm a careful businessman, but everything I learned only confirmed what I saw with my own eyes yesterday. Mia laughed incredulously. This is crazy. You don't even know me. I know enough, Alexander countered. I know you have training in early childhood education. I know you have practical experience. I know you connect with children in a way that's rare and valuable, and I know that circumstances, not lack of talent or drive, diverted you from your path. Mia shook her head, trying to process his words. Even if what you're saying made any sense, which it doesn't, I can't just leave my job. My mother depends on me. The health insurance from the cafe is basic, but it's something. Alexander nodded as if he'd anticipated this concern. The position would come with comprehensive health benefits that would cover you and your mother as a dependent. The salary would be significantly more than you make here, and the schedule would be more predictable, allowing you to better coordinate your mother's care. Mia felt lightheaded. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen in real life, especially not to people like her who had grown accustomed to doors closing, rather than opening. Why? She finally asked. Why would you offer something like this to a complete stranger? Alexander's expression softened. Because I recognize potential when I see it. Because my company needs this service and you need an opportunity. Because my daughter responded to you in a way I've never seen before. He paused. And because someone took a chance on me once when I was struggling. It changed my life. Sometimes that's all people need. One person willing to take a chance on them. Mia looked down at her hands, her mind racing. This is a lot to process. Of course it is, Alexander agreed. I don't expect an answer right now. Take some time to think about it. He slid a folder across the table. This contains the basic concept, the proposed salary and benefits package, and my contact information. Review it, discuss it with your mother, and let me know what you decide. Mia accepted the folder automatically, still dazed. And if I say no, then I wish you well and continue my search, Alexander said simply. No pressure, no hard feelings. The cafe door chimed as new customers entered. Mia glanced over her shoulder, knowing she needed to get back to work. I should go, she said, standing up. Alexander nodded, also rising. One more thing. If you're interested but concerned about your qualifications, ReadyTech would sponsor you to complete your degree while you develop the program. Many successful people in my company came through on traditional paths. What matters to me is ability and dedication, not credentials. Mia clutched the folder to her chest, suddenly feeling that the cafe around her, the space that had defined her working life for 3 years, was somehow smaller than it had been minutes ago. I'll think about it, she promised. That's all I ask, Alexander replied, extending his hand. As they shook hands, Mia couldn't help noticing how firm his grip was, confident but not overpowering. The handshake of someone who believed in equal partnerships. Thank you for listening, he added. Whatever you decide. As Alexander left the cafe, Mia returned to work. the folder tucked safely in her bag beneath the counter. Throughout her shift, she found her mind repeatedly drifting to its contents, to the possibilities it represented. By closing time, Mia had made up her mind to at least look at Alexander's offer properly. What harm could come from reading a proposal? It didn't commit her to anything. What she couldn't possibly know was that the simple act of opening that folder later that night would be the first step toward a completely transformed life, not just for her, but for her mother, for Alexander, for little Lily, and eventually for dozens of families who would come to depend on what she would build. The bus ride home that evening felt different. Mia sat with the folder in her lap, her fingers tracing the embossed ReadyTech logo on its cover. The weight of it seemed disproportionate to its actual size, as if it contained not just papers but the gravity of a pivotal life moment. Her tiny apartment was quiet when she arrived home. Her mother had already gone to bed, the only sound the gentle hum of the aging air purifier they kept running to help with her breathing. Mia made herself a cup of tea, using the same tea bag twice to make it last longer, a habit she couldn't seem to break even on days when she could afford not to, and sat at the kitchen table. For several minutes, she just stared at the folder, afraid that opening it would somehow make this strange day too real. Finally, with a deep breath, she flipped it open. The contents were startlingly comprehensive. A detailed proposal for what Alexander called Little Lumiere Childcare Center, clearly named after the cafe where they'd met. Floor plans for the commercial space, a proposed organizational structure, salary figures that made Mia's eyes widen, nearly triple what she currently earned at the cafe, plus benefits that included full medical coverage, retirement contributions, and education assistance. Most surprising was a handwritten note on ReadyTech letterhead. Mia, I realize this offer might seem impulsive or even suspicious. Please understand that while yesterday was our first meeting, the child care center has been in development for over a year. The only missing piece was finding someone with the right combination of skills and heart to lead it. Trust your instincts, but also know that this opportunity is genuine. Alexander Mia read the entire folder 3 times looking for hidden catches or unreasonable expectations. Instead, she found thoughtful planning, and what appeared to be a genuine desire to create something meaningful. Not just for his company, but for the families it would serve. She slept fitfully that night, her dreams a jumble of crying babies, café counters that stretched endlessly, and classrooms filled with sunshine. The next morning, she explained everything to her mother over a simple breakfast of congee. It sounds too good to be true, Li Chen said cautiously, her English precise despite her heavy accent. Why would this rich man offer such an opportunity to someone he just met? That's what I keep asking myself, Mia admitted. But Mom, I looked into his company. They're legitimate, well-respected, and this kind of thing, creating services for employees, it's becoming more common in tech companies. Her mother studied her face. You want to do this? It wasn't a question, but Mia answered anyway. I do. It's everything I wanted before we had to change our plans. She reached across the table to touch her mother's hand gently. But I won't do it if you're not comfortable with it. We're a team, remember? Li Chen's eyes grew misty. I have never wanted to be the reason you couldn't follow your dreams, Mia. You're not, Mia insisted. You're the reason I have dreams at all. You're the one who taught me to care for others, to see value in nurturing. Everything good in me comes from you. Her mother squeezed her hand. Then call this man. Ask your questions. Trust your instincts. That afternoon, after helping her mother with physical therapy exercises, Mia finally called the number on Alexander's card. She half expected to reach an assistant or answering service, but he picked up on the second ring. Alexander Reed. Mr. Reed, this is Mia Chen from the cafe. There was a smile in his voice when he responded. Mia, I'm glad you called. And please, it's Alexander. I've reviewed your proposal, she said, trying to keep her voice professional despite her nerves. And I have questions. A lot of questions. I'd be disappointed if you didn't, he replied. Would you be available to meet tomorrow? Perhaps somewhere more comfortable than the cafe? They arranged to meet at a small park near Mia's apartment the following afternoon. Alexander had offered to come to her neighborhood rather than asking her to travel to his office, a small gesture that didn't go unnoticed. The park was quiet on a Tuesday afternoon, just a few mothers with strollers and elderly people enjoying the mild weather. Mia arrived early, settling on a bench near the small pond. She wore her best outfit, simple black pants and a blue blouse she'd bought for job interviews before settling at the cafe. Alexander arrived precisely on time, dressed more casually than she'd seen him before in jeans and a gray sweater. He was pushing Lily in her stroller. "I hope you don't mind," he said, gesturing to his daughter. "Mrs. Patel had a doctor's appointment, and I thought, well, she's part of the reason we're talking, after all." Lily looked very different from the crying, red-faced baby at the cafe. Today she was calm, wide-eyed, taking in the world around her with evident curiosity. She broke into a smile when she saw Mia, kicking her tiny feet excitedly. "She remembers you," Alexander said, sounding slightly amazed. "Babies are more perceptive than most people give them credit for," Mia replied, smiling at Lily. "Hello again, little one." For the next hour, they talked while strolling around the pond. Mia asked direct questions about the proposal, the timeline, the expectations. Alexander answered each one thoughtfully, occasionally pushing Lily's stroller back and forth when she became fussy. "The biggest challenge," he explained, "will be balancing quality with accessibility. I want the center to primarily serve ReadyTech employees, but I also want to allocate a percentage of spots to community families, particularly those who might not otherwise afford quality childcare. A sliding scale fee structure," Mia suggested immediately. "Based on household income," Alexander nodded, looking pleased. "Exactly what I was thinking. The company would subsidize the difference." As they talked, Mia found herself impressed by how much research Alexander had already done. He'd studied various childcare models, consulted with educational experts, and surveyed his employees about their needs. Why not hire someone with more experience? Mia finally asked the question that had been nagging at her. Someone with a completed degree who's run a center before. Alexander stopped walking, turning to face her directly. "I interviewed 3 such candidates, all highly qualified on paper," he shrugged. "None of them had what I was looking for." "Which was?" "Heart," he said simply. "The ability to see children as complete individuals, not just charges to be managed. The creativity to build something unique, not just replicate existing models." He smiled slightly. "I watched you with Lily for 15 minutes and saw a more genuine connection than I did in hour-long interviews with people who had 15-page resumes." Lily chose that moment to drop her teething ring. Both adults bent to retrieve it, their hands brushing briefly. Mia handed it back to the baby, who grabbed it with surprising strength. "I still don't understand why you're taking this chance on me," Mia said quietly. Alexander was silent for a moment, his gaze drifting toward the pond where a family of ducks glided across the surface. "When I was 22, he finally said, I had an idea for software that could help small businesses manage inventory more efficiently. It was a good idea, but I had no money, no connections, and was working night shifts at a gas station to support myself after my mother got sick." He paused, seeming to consider how much to share. "One night, a regular customer, a woman who came in every Tuesday for lottery tickets, asked why I always looked so tired. I told her about my idea, not expecting anything. Turns out she was a retired business professor who still had connections at several tech incubators." "She helped you start your company?" Mia guessed. "She changed my life," Alexander corrected. "Not just with connections, but by believing in me when there was no logical reason to do so. She saw something in me that transcended my circumstances." He looked at Mia directly. "I'm not a particularly spiritual person, but I do believe there's a certain symmetry to life. Sometimes you're the one who needs a chance, and sometimes you're the one positioned to give one." Lily began to fuss, and Alexander lifted her from the stroller, settling her against his shoulder with practiced ease. "I should get her home for her nap," he said. "But before I go, do you have any other questions, concerns?" Mia considered for a moment. "Just one. What happens if this doesn't work out? If I'm not what you hoped for in this role?" Alexander nodded, acknowledging the validity of the question. "The proposal includes a 6-month development period before the center opens. During that time, you'd be working on curriculum development, staff hiring, and setting up the space. We'd have regular check-ins to ensure we're aligned in our vision. If at any point either of us feels it's not the right fit, we part ways professionally with a severance package that would give you time to find another position." He shifted Lily to his other shoulder. "I believe in planning for success while acknowledging that not every partnership works out. But Mia, I have good instincts about people. It's how I've built my company, and my instincts about you are strong." As they said goodbye, Alexander handed Mia a small envelope. The official offer letter. "Take as much time as you need to decide." Mia watched them leave, Alexander murmuring softly to his daughter as they walked toward the parking area. The envelope felt warm in her hand, alive with possibility. That night, after her mother had gone to bed, Mia sat at their small kitchen table with 2 columns drawn on a piece of paper: reasons to accept and reasons to decline. The first column quickly filled with practical benefits: better salary, health coverage for her mother, professional fulfillment, opportunity to finish her degree. The second column contained only fears: fear of failure, fear of change, fear of trusting too easily. Sometimes fear just means you're about to do something important, her mother had always told her. The next morning, Mia called Mr. Huang before her shift. "I need to give my notice," she said when he answered, her heart pounding but her voice steady. There was a pause, then a soft chuckle. "The man with the baby?"
"He offered you a job?"
"How did you know?" Mia asked, surprised. "I've owned this cafe for 30 years, Mr. Huang replied. "I know opportunity when I see it walking through my door. Be happy, Mia. You deserve this chance." Later that day, Mia called Alexander and accepted the position. His response was warm but not surprised, as if he'd known all along what her answer would be. "Welcome to ReadyTech, Mia," he said. "I think we're about to create something special together." As she hung up the phone, Mia felt a curious lightness, as if some invisible weight she'd been carrying for years had suddenly lifted. For the first time since her mother's diagnosis had derailed their lives, Mia allowed herself to feel something she'd nearly forgotten: hope, bright and unburdened, for the future ahead. What she couldn't yet know was how this decision would ripple outward, touching not just her life and Alexander's, but countless others in ways that neither of them could possibly imagine. 6 months later, Mia stood in the center of a sunlit room, hardly able to believe the transformation. What had once been an empty commercial space with concrete floors and bare walls was now a vibrant childcare center, filled with colorful learning stations, tiny furniture, and the soft sounds of a bubbling fish tank in the reading corner. "What do you think?" Alexander asked, joining her in the main play area. "Does it match what you envisioned?" Mia turned slowly, taking in the details. The nature-inspired mural that local artists had painted along one wall, the cozy nap room with star projectors on the ceiling, the outdoor playground visible through large windows, complete with garden boxes where the children would grow vegetables and flowers. "It's better," she admitted, her voice soft with wonder. "So much better than I could have imagined." The past 6 months had been the most challenging and rewarding of her life. After accepting Alexander's offer, Mia had been thrown into a whirlwind of activity, completing certification requirements, developing curriculum, interviewing potential staff members, and working closely with architects to design a space that would nurture children's development in every possible way. Alexander had been true to his word, providing resources while giving Mia the freedom to shape the center according to her vision. They had developed an unexpected friendship through countless planning meetings, often with Lily playing nearby or sitting on one of their laps. "Are you ready for the grand opening tomorrow?" Alexander asked, straightening a row of picture books on a shelf. "As ready as I'll ever be," Mia replied. "The staff training went well. All the safety inspections are passed. The welcome packets for families are prepared." She brushed a speck of dust from a tiny chair. "Now we just need the children to bring this place to life." 28 enrolled already, Alexander noted with satisfaction. 15 from ReadyTech and 13 from the community program. The community program had been Mia's passion project within the larger vision, an initiative ensuring that a third of Little Lumiere's spots were reserved for families who couldn't otherwise afford quality childcare. The sliding scale fee structure meant that some families paid as little as 10% of the standard rate, with ReadyTech subsidizing the difference. "Have you told your mother about the surprise yet?" Alexander asked, the knowing smile playing at his lips. Mia shook her head. "Not yet. I want her to see it tomorrow, at the opening." The surprise was a dedicated space within the center, the grandparents' corner, designed specifically for older adults to interact with the children in comfortable, accessible surroundings. It featured adjustable height tables, supportive chairs, and activities that could be enjoyed by people with limited mobility. Leechin would be the first honorary grandparent in the program, spending 3 mornings a week sharing stories, teaching simple Mandarin words, and passing on traditional crafts to eager young learners. She's going to cry, Mia predicted. So will you? Alexander teased gently. Probably, Mia admitted without embarrassment. Crying had become somewhat commonplace over the past months. Tears of frustration when city permits were delayed. Tears of joy when the first tiny chairs arrived. Tears of exhaustion during the weeks when she was finishing her certification, while helping her mother through a difficult medication adjustment. Through it all, Alexander had been steadfast, not just as an employer, but increasingly as a friend. He respected her expertise, valued her opinions, and never once made her feel like the opportunity he'd given her placed her in his debt. I should get going, Alexander said, checking his watch. I promised Lily we'd have a picnic dinner before her bedtime. Our little tradition before big days. The mention of Lily brought a smile to Mia's face. The once fussy baby was now an energetic toddler, who had appointed herself as unofficial inspector of every new toy that entered the center. Tomorrow she would be little Lumiere's youngest enrollee, attending 3 days a week while Alexander worked in the Rated offices across town. Give her a hug from me, Mia said. Tell her Miss Mia says sweet dreams. After Alexander left, Mia made one final circuit of the center, checking that everything was perfect for tomorrow's opening. In the kitchen, she adjusted the child-height sink fixtures. In the art room, she made sure the smocks were hung on easily accessible hooks. In the infant area, she tested each rocker to ensure it moved smoothly. It was nearly dark by the time she locked up, the setting sun casting long shadows across the playground equipment. As Mia waited for her bus, she realized she hadn't felt this particular kind of tired, the good tired that comes from meaningful work, in a very long time. The next morning dawned bright and clear. Mia arrived at Little Lumiere at 6:30 a.m., 2.5 hours before the official opening ceremony. Her mother came with her, using her cane but moving more easily than she had in years. The new treatment plan developed by the specialist, covered by Mia's comprehensive insurance, was making a noticeable difference. So this is your new kingdom, Leechin said, moving slowly through the center, touching the colorful walls with wonder. My daughter, the director. Do you like it, Mom? Mia asked, suddenly feeling like a child seeking approval. Like it? Mia, this place. It's everything you talked about when you were studying. Everything you dreamed of creating. Before Mia could respond, the front door chimed as the first staff members arrived. Zhang, the assistant director Mia had hired from her old daycare practicum, and Priya, the infant room supervisor who had previously worked at an exclusive nursery across town but had jumped at the chance to join Little Lumiere's mission-driven program. Soon the center was bustling with last-minute preparations. Balloons were tied to the entrance sign. Welcome cookies were arranged on platters. Name tags were set out for each child expected today. At 8:45, Alexander arrived with Lily, who was wearing a tiny dress with butterflies printed on it and carrying her favorite stuffed rabbit. Behind them came Mrs. Patel, who would be joining the grandparents program alongside Leechin. The press is outside, Alexander murmured to Mia. Just local outlets. Are you okay with saying a few words? Mia nodded, straightening the simple blazer she wore over her comfortable work clothes. The blazer had been a gift from Alexander. Director's attire, he'd called it with a wink. At exactly 9 a.m., they opened the doors. Families streamed in. Raditech employees Mia had come to know during planning meetings. Neighborhood families who had applied for the community program. Curious local officials, and a handful of reporters with cameras. Mia watched as children began exploring the space, some shyly clinging to parents, others boldly investigating the toys and activities. A small boy discovered the musical instruments in one corner and began enthusiastically banging a drum. Twin girls made a beeline for the dress-up area, emerging moments later as a firefighter and an astronaut. Alexander stood at the front of the main room, Lily perched on his hip, and welcomed everyone briefly before turning the microphone over to Mia. As she looked out at the gathered faces, the children, the parents, her staff, her mother seated proudly in the grandparents' corner, Mia felt a surge of emotion that momentarily robbed her of speech. 6 months ago, she finally began. I was serving coffee and wondering if I would ever use my education training again. Sometimes life takes unexpected turns. Sometimes our paths lead us to places we never imagined. She gestured to the space around them. Little Lumiere means little light. That's what children are, lights in our world. But they need spaces where they can shine brightly, where they are seen and heard and valued. That's what we've created here. Not just a child care center, but a community where every child and every family belongs. Mia's gaze found her mother, whose eyes shone with tears, and then Alexander, who nodded encouragingly. Someone once took a chance on me, she continued, when there was no logical reason to do so. That act of faith changed everything. She smiled at the assembled families. That's what we're doing here too, having faith in these children, in their potential, in the light they bring to our world. After the speeches, the center truly came alive. Staff members led small groups of children in welcome activities, while parents chatted over coffee and pastries. Mia moved through the space answering questions, solving minor crises, a missing comfort blanket, a nervous child, a bathroom accident, and watching her vision unfold in real time. In the grandparents' corner, she paused to observe her mother showing a fascinated group of preschoolers how to fold simple origami animals. Li Chen's hands, often stiff with pain, moved with surprising grace as she demonstrated each fold, her face alight with the pleasure of passing on her knowledge. Across the room, Alexander was chatting with a group of ReadyTech employees whose children were enrolled, while Lily toddled nearby, already making friends with a boy about her age. Later, during a quiet moment, Alexander found Mia in the office, where she was handling a last-minute registration. "You're a natural at this," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Just as I knew you would be." Mia smiled, filing away the completed paperwork. "It feels right. All of it." "I have something for you," Alexander said, placing a small box on her desk. Opening day gift. Inside was a delicate silver pendant in the shape of a key. Mia lifted it questioningly. "It's meant to be symbolic," Alexander explained. "Keys open doors. Create access. That's what you're doing here. Opening doors for these children, for their families. For yourself too, I think." Mia nodded, unexpectedly moved by the thoughtfulness of the gift. "Thank you. Not just for this, but for everything. For seeing something in me that day at the cafe." "I just recognize what was already there," Alexander replied simply. A small voice interrupted them, one of the teachers, looking slightly harried. "Ms. Chen, we have a situation with the water table in the toddler room." Mia laughed, slipping the necklace into her pocket for safekeeping. Duty calls. The glamorous life of a child care center director. As she hurried to deal with what turned out to be an enthusiastic group of toddlers who had discovered the joy of splashing, Mia caught sight of herself reflected in one of the large windows. Confident, purposeful, exactly where she was meant to be. 6 months ago, she had been a server worried about making rent. Today, she was leading a program that would touch countless lives. All because a baby had cried in a cafe, and she had offered to help. Life's most important turns, Mia reflected as she knelt beside the water table with paper towels and a smile, often come disguised as ordinary moments. A crying baby, a kind gesture, a chance taken, and sometimes, if you're very lucky, those ordinary moments lead to extraordinary changes, not just for yourself, but for everyone whose path intersects with yours along the way. Outside the window, the sign for Little Lumiere Child Care Center caught the morning sunlight, gleaming like a promise of brighter days ahead.